I'll keep fighting for her truth, Lana said, her eyes filled with tears. Because Natalie deserves peace, and the world deserves to know what really happened that night. In the weeks after Natalie Wood's death, Hollywood moved quickly to quiet the storm. Headlines mourned the tragic accident. Glossy magazines printed smiling photos of Natalie and Robert Wagner from happier days, and the studios urged silence. To many in the industry, this was not just a tragedy. It was a scandal that could destroy reputations. And in 1981, Hollywood had mastered the art of making inconvenient truths disappear. For Lana Wood, that silence was deafening. They didn't want questions, she later said. They wanted closure, but I couldn't close my eyes and pretend everything was fine. From the very start, Lana noticed how neatly the story was packaged. Reporters were told Natalie slipped while trying to secure a dinghy. Robert Wagner's statement emphasized his grief and shock, insisting there was no foul play. Within days, that narrative became the accepted truth. The autopsy report was rushed, interviews with key witnesses were brief, and contradictory details were conveniently ignored. Lana wasn't buying it. The bruises, the scratches, the fear she'd felt before, it didn't add up, she said. But when I tried to speak up, people told me to stop. They said I was hurting her memory. Behind the scenes, Wagner's connections ran deep. He was one of Hollywood's elite, a man with powerful friends in studios, law enforcement, and the media. According to Lana, it felt as though everyone had a reason to protect him, or at least to protect the image of Hollywood's golden couple. They didn't want the world to see what was really happening behind those perfect smiles, she said bitterly. Even Christopher Walken, who was on the boat that night, stayed mostly silent. When pressed in interviews, he deflected. It was an accident, he'd say. That's all there is to it. But for Lana, those words only deepened the mystery. If it was an accident, she asked, why is everyone so afraid to talk? Then came the most chilling moment. A few weeks after the funeral, Lana received an anonymous phone call. The voice on the other end warned her to stop asking questions. They said, if you love your sister, let her rest. She hung up, shaken. But the message was clear. Someone didn't want the truth coming out. Years passed, and Natalie's story faded into Hollywood legend. Films celebrated her beauty, not her pain. Award shows honored her memory but never mentioned the unanswered questions. They turned her into a symbol, Lana said, but they buried her truth with her. Still, she never gave up. She collected documents, interviews, and witness statements. Anything that could prove her sister's death wasn't what it seemed. Many dismissed her as obsessed, even bitter. But when investigators reopened the case decades later, much of what she'd said suddenly made sense. I wasn't crazy, Lana said firmly. I was just telling the truth too soon. In 2018, Robert Wagner was officially named a person of interest in the reopened investigation. Detectives cited inconsistencies in his statements and witness reports that contradicted his version of events. But despite the renewed attention, no charges were filed. The truth, it seemed, remained just out of reach. To Lana, that was proof of how deeply Hollywood protects its own. They'll rewrite history before they'll admit one of their own could be guilty, she said. And my sister's story is the price of that silence. Even now, decades later, the pain hasn't faded. When Lana looks at old photos of Natalie, she sees both the beauty and the burden of being a Hollywood star. They made her into an icon, she said softly. But behind those eyes, there was a woman begging to be heard. For Lana, speaking out isn't about revenge. It's about justice. Natalie deserves the truth, even if it's uncomfortable, she insists. And I'll keep fighting until people see what really happened that night. No more cover-ups. No more lies. The question that still haunts Hollywood remains the same. If Natalie Wood's death truly was an accident, why has the truth been buried for so long? For Lana Wood, time never healed the wound. It only deepened the ache of questions left unanswered. Decades have passed since Natalie's body was pulled from the dark Pacific waters, yet every memory, every word, every glance between them still feels close enough to touch. People tell me to move on, she says softly. But how do you move on when your sister's truth is still buried? After years of silence, grief turned into purpose. Lana made a promise, to Natalie, to herself, and to the millions who still loved her, that she would never stop seeking the truth. But over time, her fight became more than a search for justice. It became a journey toward peace, a way to honor her sister not just for how she died, but for how she lived. Natalie Wood was more than a movie star. To her family, she was warmth and laughter, the woman who would cook dinner for everyone even after filming all day, who loved old records and long walks, who wrote notes of encouragement to her daughters. "People saw glamour," Lana said, "but I saw a heart bigger than any role she ever played. Still, every joyful memory is shadowed by regret." The night before Natalie left for that fateful trip, Lana had called her. They talked about the holidays, about her daughters, and about her new film. "She sounded tired," Lana recalled, "but happy to have a little escape." When the call ended, Lana almost said it again. "Please, don't go with him." But she didn't. "I thought I'd told her enough times already," she said, her eyes wet. "I didn't want to sound like I was nagging." That silence has haunted her ever since. Over the years, Lana found herself fighting two battles, one against Hollywood's powerful silence and another within herself. "I had to stop letting anger consume me," she admitted. Natalie wouldn't have wanted that. She loved deeply even those who hurt her. Instead of letting bitterness win, Lana turned her pain into advocacy. She began speaking publicly about domestic abuse and emotional manipulation, urging women not to ignore the signs she saw in her sister's life. "Natalie's story shouldn't just be a mystery, it should be a lesson," she said. "No one, no matter how famous or loved, should stay in a situation that feels unsafe." She also wrote about Natalie's real self, the dreamer, the devoted mother, the girl who used to sing by the window when it rained. "I wanted the world to see her heart, not just her tragedy," Lana explained, "because that's how I remember her." Now, at 79, Lana says she's finally made peace. Not because all the answers have been found, but because she knows her sister's spirit deserves rest. "I've carried this for so long," she whispered. "I used to think justice meant punishment. But now I think it means truth, just the truth. She still believes there was more to that night, but she stopped waiting for Hollywood to confess it. The truth always finds a way to rise," she said, "even if it takes a lifetime." In her quiet moments, Lana often visits the ocean, the same ocean that took her sister. She doesn't go there with anger anymore. She goes to talk to Natalie, to feel close to her. "Sometimes I can almost hear her voice," she said. "It's like she's saying, 'It's okay. Lana, let go.' But I always tell her, 'I will. Just not yet.' And maybe that's the truest part of her story. The love that refuses to fade. The bond that even death couldn't break." "I begged her to leave him," Lana said, her voice trembling but steady. "I couldn't save her then, but I can keep her story alive now. That's my promise." For those who remember Natalie Wood as just another Hollywood tragedy, Lana wants them to look deeper, to see the woman behind the stardom, the sister who dreamed, who loved, who deserved better. "She was light," Lana said. "And though the world took her too soon, that light will never go out." In that moment, Willie wasn't thinking about fame, fortune, or even the endless miles he had traveled. He was thinking about the people, the millions who had laughed, cried, and lived through his words. "Music is what connects us," he once said. "It's the bridge between my heart and yours." And after all these years, that bridge still stood strong. But even bridges need rest. Willie knew that his story had reached its natural ending. He wasn't afraid of it. In fact, he welcomed it. "Every song has to fade out sometime," he whispered. "You just hope people keep humming the tune." Those close to him said he'd become more reflective than ever, talking about the afterlife not with fear, but with curiosity. He often said he hoped to see Waylon and Merle again, maybe sit around somewhere up there, passing a guitar and trading songs like the old days. Despite his gentle acceptance, saying goodbye hasn't been easy for the fans. Concertgoers who've seen his recent shows describe an air of reverence, as if everyone knows they're witnessing something sacred. Willie still walks on stage with that same smile, but when he sings, it's not something you get over, but it's something you get through. There's a quiver in his voice that says it all. The crowd often weeps, not out of sadness, but gratitude for the man who gave them a lifetime of honesty, hope, and healing. Off stage, Willie has become quieter, spending his days surrounded by nature, family, and the spirit of simplicity that defined him long before fame ever found him. He's still writing, not for albums or charts, but for himself. "The words still come," he said softly in a recent interview. "They just don't have anywhere to go anymore." As night falls on the ranch, Willie picks up his guitar for one last tune. The wind carries the notes into the open fields, a melody that feels like a farewell and a blessing at once. His voice, though weathered, still holds that same warmth, that same truth. It's a reminder that some songs never really end. They just find a new way to live on. When asked how he'd like to be remembered, Willie simply smiled and said, "As a man who tried to make the world a little kinder." And maybe that's his greatest legacy, not the records, not the awards, but the way he made people feel. So if this truly is the end of the road for Willie Nelson, it's not a tragedy. It's a beautiful, peaceful, close to a story written in love, sung with laughter, and lived with grace. Somewhere out there in the still night air, his music still plays, a final, everlasting tune from a man who gave his heart to the world and asked for nothing in return. As time moves on and the lights dim on the world's greatest stages, one thing remains certain: Willie Nelson's voice will never truly fade. His songs, born from a lifetime of love, loss, rebellion, and grace, have become part of the American soul itself. Even as he steps away from the spotlight, the world still feels his presence. In the dusty bars where his tunes play on old jukeboxes, in the quiet car rides where families hum along to "On the Road Again," and in the hearts of every dreamer who ever found comfort in his words. For Willie, the end isn't sorrowful, it's natural. "Life's just one long song," he once said, "and death's the last verse." That simple truth reflects the way he's lived, not fighting against time, but dancing with it. Each wrinkle on his face, each crack in his voice, tells a story of a man who gave everything he had to music, to friendship, and to the joy of being alive. Those close to him say that these days, Willie spends his mornings watching the sun rise over his ranch, sipping black coffee and feeding his horses. There's peace in his eyes, the kind that only comes after a lifetime of storms. "You can't control how long you live," he said with a soft chuckle, "but you can sure as hell control how you live it." And he did. Through every hardship, he chose kindness, humor, and music. His final wish isn't for fame or memorials. It's for people to keep singing, to find joy in the same melodies that once saved him. "If the music lives," he said, "then I'm still around." It's a simple sentiment, but one that captures his entire spirit. The belief that art, when born from truth, never dies. Fans who've followed him for decades often describe his concerts as spiritual experiences. Even now, when he walks on stage for what could be his final tours, there's no sadness, only gratitude. The lights rise, the crowd roars, and Willie smiles, tipping his hat. When he sings, it's not a goodbye. It's a blessing. A reminder that every ending carries a little piece of forever. He once wrote in a poem, "The road may end, but the song rolls on in hearts and souls when I am gone. No tears, my friends. Just let it play. The music knows. It finds its way." And that's exactly how Willie Nelson's legacy will endure. Not as a man chasing fame, but as a poet who taught the world that even pain can be turned into beauty if you sing it out loud. His laughter, his humility, his stubborn freedom, they all echo through every verse he ever sang. As the last notes of his journey fade into the Texas night, one thing becomes clear. Willie Nelson didn't just live a life, he lived a song. And that song will never end.